emotion. It's entirely all emotion because they don't have the experience or the financial expertise to understand the amount of fuel that that business needs in order to pay for its weight.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Richer Geek Podcast. Today, we have Adam Callinan. He's a founder of Pentane, an e-commerce profitability system. All of you techies out there, ears perked up when I said e-commerce. His system transforms existing e-commerce data into guidance on the exact revenue, ROAS, advertising spend required to get to profitability and beyond. When combined with Pentane's real-time e-commerce KPI dashboard, changes to expenses, revenue, and ad spend can be mentioned and adjusted in real time. That's very interesting. This is where the magic happens. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing great, Mike. How you doing? I just realized with that
Good.
intro that we need to shorten that down dramatically on our end. Yeah.
So I always like to start it out. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what got you started in e-commerce and getting Pentane off the ground.
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a dad of two little kids and a husband of an amazing wife. I was born and raised in Flagstaff, Arizona. I know you're there in Arizona. I now live in Montana. I did not intend to go into e-commerce. It sort of fell upon me. That's a post-college graduation, went into a medical device company as the first employee. I was not an owner of that business, but got to build that up and out, ended up in Southern California, expanded the company out there. We had spun off a tech component that dealt in health insurance reimbursement and all this very not sexy, but interesting stuff that sold my position in that business in 2013. And my cousin, Matt, who's out there in Phoenix with you, had this idea about a beer product that was basically cut a water bottle in half and stuffed it with neoprene. And we created this product called BottleKeeper. And that was my entree into e-commerce in the consumer world based on my prior experience to that in the medical device business, which was big and heavy and cumbersome and operationally expensive to operate. When we got into the tech component, I was enlightened to appreciate how much smarter you can build a business when you do it intentionally. So we were really smart in hindsight, where there's a lot of dumb things we did in BottleKeeper. But we were pretty smart early on in building a really lean, scalable business that did some pretty cool things before we got acquired.
Yeah, find me an entrepreneur that didn't make some mistakes.
Yeah.
It's like, my God, if I could just go back just once. I don't need to do it more than once, but man, there's some things that I could have happened, it would have changed our lives. But we are here because this is our path that we're meant to be.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about Pentane. And everyone knows e-commerce. Everyone that does Amazon type things, maybe it's their own website. They probably just throw a bunch of stuff on there and see if it sells, or they use some type of e-commerce platform just to download stuff. That's not good enough, is it?
Absolutely not. I mean, to your point, you sort of do the best you have with what you have. And over time, you figure it out. And through making endless mistakes, taking it right to the edge of burning it to the ground enough times, it gets better and better. And, you don't realize that when it's happening. You look back at it in hindsight and realize that those iterative steps added up to something that ultimately worked. And what we did, one of the things that we did really well, Matt and I did really well at BottleKeeper, was we had a deep financial understanding of how to operate the business. And that's a combination of the operational expense side, as well as the customer acquisition side. In an e-commerce business, obviously, typically you're spending money to acquire a customer somewhere. And there exists this gap in an early stage business in between the financial side and the customer acquisition side. And we were really good at filling that gap with math. We were both good enough at math to be able to create some systems that helped us solve for that. And the result of which is in the first 3 years, we got to 8 million in revenue with no employees, no investors, no debt. And so that was just something we had figured out how to do. And again, we broke it a bazillion times or whatever, and it worked. And then we got in, we grew from there, ended up on Shark Tank when we were way too big to be on Shark Tank. And the company got acquired, and we were an 8-figure revenue business, and we only had 4 employees. So those systems are the basis for Pentane. I didn't realize it when we were doing it. We were just solving our own problems. But many of the systems that we had created, I then went and plugged into post-acquisition, plugged into companies my wife and I had invested in, and it completely changed their businesses because they were operating like we just talked about. You sort of throw everything against the wall and hope some things stick. And when you understand how to pull the levers inside the financial side of the business and the customer acquisition side, you can define the outcome you want to create. Let's say net margin, you want to create a 10% net margin. You can start there and use math to back out exactly what to do. So it becomes much more intentional and strategic than hope and guess and pray, which is how we tend to operate.
Throw something on the wall, see if it sticks.
Yeah.
Wait till next week.
Yeah.
Try it again.
Exactly.
And most of us do that. And I know I did that before I finally made some money. And but you laugh. Yeah, I can laugh at them. But it'd be nice not to have made those mistakes. Where were you 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
It's in what feels like a different life, certainly a different chapter.
Absolutely. So let's get through those steps a little bit. Let's kind of dig into Pentane. No, how'd you get the name? What's the name? I got to ask.
But yeah, Pentane is the short answer is that because I'm a nerd. The literal answer is because Pentane is a 5-carbon molecule that makes the shape of a W in organic chemistry, which I flipped and made into a graph that goes up. My degree was molecular and cellular biology. I know I had to take a lot of chemistry, blah, blah, blah. When I was naming the company Octane, which is also like, there's these chemicals that live in a family called alkanes. It's like pentane, octane, hexane, methane, propane, ethane, all these anes. And the easy version is I could buy pentane.com for $2,000 and there was zero sound around it from a business perspective. It's basically like it's a solvent they use for oil refineries. So it was a very quiet name.
There you go. So let's dig into Pentane a little bit and talk about, different steps I have in e-commerce. Let's start, number one, what type of e-commerce companies do you help? We'll start there, and then let's dig into some of what it is that Pentane does.
Yeah, it's interesting. The math inside of Pentane is the same for ExxonMobil as it is for a landscaping company or a dry cleaner as it is for a consumer brand. So that being said, I'm not interested in being everything to everyone. So where we can be the most helpful because of my last decade of experience in consumer is in consumer. So we're focused on consumer brands, particularly early stage. So let's say sub 20 million in revenue, because we can be the most impactful. The product can be the most impactful there. Now, if you visualize yourself the captain of a rocket ship and you have a mission objective, and that is to go to the moon, you need to deliver payload to the moon. When you get into your rocket ship, you look up at a series of screens that are your command center. On those screens are high level, metrics like airspeed, direction, fuel, all the things that you need, high level stuff to operate the machine. And you can click into those and get diagnostics in more detail on each of them. Some alerts will pop up and tell you if there's a problem. And then you have a guidance system, which effectively tells you if you're going to add weight, you need to change your fuel, you need to increase your efficiency, you need to make some changes in the ship. Now, but this is the direction you need to go. I look at business the exact same way. As the captain of your ship, as the head of your business or the head of marketing inside of a business, you need a command center to be able to have real-time high-level metrics that are telling you what's happening in the business. Because typically what happens is we don't know whether it's air quote good or bad until we get a P&L next month. And that is a horrific way to operate a business. I mean, I get it. I like, that's not a judgmental statement. We did that for a while, and then we had to create solutions to that. So you also need, you need to set your mission objective. You need to put a stake in the sand that says, we want to get to break even, or we want to get to a 10% net margin or a 20%, whatever it is that makes sense for you. And because of the way Pentane is structured, it has all of the expense data that pulls via APIs out of your, for example, QuickBooks account. It has all your revenue data because it's connected to Shopify or Amazon. It has all your advertising data because it's connected to Meta and TikTok and all these things. And it compiles all that and applies math to start answering questions like, you need to set your ad budget at $12,472 per month at a 2.9 return on that ad spend in order to accomplish this goal. And if you add fixed expense, which in a rocket ship is weight, it's payload. In a business, it's weight, it's payload. How does that math change? Where does your ad spend need to change to? Where does the performance on that ad spend need to change to? If you're going to offer a discount, where does the performance need to change? Like, answer all these questions that we typically, as early stage operators, we make it completely in the dark, just operating in the dark. So answer the questions before you make the decision so you can at least see where you're going.
Yeah, it's unfathomable. I remember just people, my friends, they just throw stuff on Amazon and they just kind of wish and pray and try to pay for sponsors. I mean, they're doing other different types of things, spinning their wheels in order to try to gain more revenue or more likability, more DPIs. It's crazy. So you're saying 20 million under, how soon can someone that has a business use this functionality? Do you need a year's worth of metrics? Do you need something for the computer to crunch in order to set these goals?
No, you need, well, for 98% of the system, no. If you're trying to get answers around, for example, lifetime value or LTV, then yes, you need a year worth of data. And that's just because of the way LTV is calculated. You have to have at least 12 months worth of data in order to calculate. But I mean, that's one metric of 40 metrics in a fairly robust system. So for everything else, the minimum entry point, the barrier to entry to a small company is just having accurate financials. So for example, we see if a company, they might have a QuickBooks account, they might be managing it, they might have someone managing it. If they're living out of the company bank account, then it's all inaccurate. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can't make real decisions off of that. So it needs to be, the business just needs to have a functioning P&L. So that could be $100,000 a year company. It could, we have a company that we talked to the other day that's about to launch. So they want to do it with a projected P&L. They have idea. They think they know what it's going to be. And let's be honest, like, anything is better than nothing. We can, you can adjust the system as you go, but in that case, using a projected P&L is a great place to start, because at least we'll be making decisions with data and more data and less emotion.
Curious about growing your wealth, the best opportunities aren't always the most obvious. That's why we've partnered with Bob Bernatas of Franchise with Bob. He specializes in helping investors like you leverage franchising, an overlooked but highly profitable way to create semi-passive income. And for a limited time, Bob is giving our listeners access to his course on franchising investing for free. Inside, you'll learn how to evaluate franchises, minimize risk, and maximize returns. This course is normally priced at $499. Don't let this pass you by. Go to edu.franchisewithbob.com/RG and get your free course today. Well, and that's it. I keep telling entrepreneurs, there's zero emotions. It comes down to math, basically, P&Ls, and making decisions. And, but I want to sell cupcakes, and how many cupcakes do you need to break even? And they're like, I don't care. I want cupcakes. And 4 months later, guess what?
Yeah,
in a
the
high
math
rent
might
district.
disagree with that. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
common sense might. You're
Yeah.
in a $5,000 a month rental space, and that's a lot of cupcakes. Um,
Well, that's actually like that's one of the thing Pentane
yeah.
can answer before. I mean, it can tell you because the system understands the underlying margins, the
Well,
amount of, I don't want to go too far down the nerdy rabbit hole, but like understanding contribution margin, which you as the operator don't need to do, but it is an important metric and it lives in the system. So if you're going to sell cupcakes and that cupcake cost, you're going to sell it for $3 and it costs $2 to make, and then you have to package it and you have to advertise and do all these things, you might only have 10 cents of contribution margin left at the end of that $3. And that's not a business. I
yeah.
mean, I'm sorry, it's just not. That is not, there's math is going to disallow that from working if you ever want to make money on it. That's like a break-even business. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, the larger the system can tell you that before you go and do it.
Yeah. And that's fascinating because I think number one, people need to know that.
Yeah.
I've always wanted my whole life. I love doing this, and I'm like, doesn't make money. Will it survive? So, talking about those issues and the problems, name two or three of the biggest issues or problems you see in early stage companies. And number one might be just emotions and things like that. But what are some of the big problems that you see for early stage companies that could be solved with your company?
The number one, like not even close to a two or three, the number one problem in consumer brands, it's different for other types of businesses, but in consumer brands, is that they are completely arbitrarily defining their ad budgets. They're just making them up.
Mm-hmm.
It's part emotion, it's entirely all emotion because they don't have the experience or the financial expertise to understand the amount of fuel that business needs in
Mm-hmm.
order to pay for its weight, to pay for its expenses. It's specifically its fixed expenses, operating expenses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you have a business that is, I'm going to make these numbers up, is spending $100,000 a month in fixed expenses, that's payroll, office, health insurance, employee benefits, like all that stuff that you pay regardless of whether or not you make a dollar. And you set your ad budget, and let's say you're on a 75% gross margin, which is a strong business. Those are great margins.
Sure.
If that operator is going and defining their ad budget at $10,000 a month because that's what they feel comfortable spending,
Right.
there is a 0% chance that they are going to get to break even. Because in order for them to get to break even, that business might need to generate, it would need to generate $200,000 on $10,000 in ad spend in order to get to break even. That's a 20x return on ad spend. That is not going to happen.
Yeah.
We need to spend enough money so that ROAS, return on ad spend, can come down to 4 or 3.
Yeah.
And that's one of the key features in the guidance systems of Pentane is it takes that and it plots it on a curve, it's a negative log curve, but it looks like an upside down hockey stick. So they can look on the curve and see the relationship between the needed ad spend and the output ROAS in order to accomplish their goal, so that they can at least make decisions with real data. But that is the number one thing that we see. And it typically, because it's risk capital, companies dramatically underspend on what the company actually needs to accomplish their goals. So it's just set up for failure.
Yeah. And that's not fun money, right?
No, it's not at all. It's painful.
It's painful. And,
Yeah.
I know a lot about, domain ratings and all this sort of stuff and the pain for the bloggers and trying to get keywords. And it's like going, I don't care about keywords. I don't care about the stuff. Oh, you know what Google does, you
Yeah.
know, and you're like going, how much, 6, 7,000 a month just for you to blog and keyword me and get my domain rating. It doesn't even guarantee anything, and they
Yeah.
get people to
Sure.
come to the website, but there's all this other stuff and landing pages and all this sort of stuff that people just don't realize, right? It's just, you've got to spend it.
Yeah.
What?
Those are critical parts of of the whole system. The
Yeah.
company is like a puzzle that's made of 1,000 pieces, but
Hmm.
all the pieces aren't the same size. They're not equally weighted. And so those are important pieces to the puzzle. The where companies really get in trouble is when they go to like spend on Facebook and they go to spend on TikTok. They want to go pay to acquire a customer. And
Yeah.
it's like pure risk capital to them because they don't understand how it needs to perform in order to be good for the business.
Hmm.
So that's the first thing. Let's answer that question with
Yeah.
data and not emotion.
There you go. What are some of the other couple things? Because I mean, the first one was great.
Yeah,
What
I
are some of
mean,
the other things that
the
they're doing?
the second, which I maybe over exaggerated because it's still a massive problem, is that the we don't understand how negatively impactful fixed expenses are to a company.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't understand. And so, and want to be clear, I understand this because I have been guilty of it. I have learned this lesson the hard way on a number of occasions, including after I already knew the answer to the question. So I am not immune to this. But we have a company. It starts to have some success. Success meaning it's generating revenue. The sales are increasing. Setting
Hmm.
aside whether or not it's making money, that's a whole separate thing. And we think that we need more people in order to continue that growth and success. So we start solving problems with bodies.
Yeah.
And although it feels nice to say at your cocktail party, like, hey, we're up to 17 employees or 77 employees, the reality is, unless you deeply understand how the revenue needs to respond in order to pay for those employees, it rarely works out well. And you typically, companies sort of grow in like an S curve. If you look at their P&Ls over time, they grow and then they do that. They go and add a bunch of weight to the business. Sales
Yeah.
suffer and they're like, oh shoot, we're hemorrhaging money. And then they cut it all. And that prompts a growth phase because they get lean and smart and healthy. And then they grow and then they do it again. And they sort of go through these cycles. So
Yeah.
again, like understanding how fixed expenses, how actually detrimental they are to the business is super important.
Yeah. I can see that. And how much is it? Because another thing that early stage companies do is they'll actually not only grow in employees, but they'll either brick and mortar too fast or set up shop they're just, wow, I'm popular. Everyone loves me. And they just bam.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that something that you guys can analyze and say, hey, you know what? It's not quite time yet to do this.
We can't today say have the conditional logic to
Hmm.
say if you were thinking of doing this thing like expanding into brick and mortar or expanding to Australia, which we did when we shouldn't have,
Hmm.
doing all those things, we don't have the conditional logic to say this is a good idea or not a good idea. What we do have is the ability to go and add in those expenses,
Yeah.
the costs associated to those things,
Yeah.
to go and add in price increases or discounts in sales, go and add in these important things that are impactful to the business and have the system tell you how the business needs to respond to pay for those things,
Okay.
to
Yeah.
tell you how much revenue you need to drive, to tell you how your conversion rates in your website need to change up or down to be net
Hmm.
positive. It can answer a lot of the does this make sense questions, as long as you can distill that down to what it's going to cost to do.
Yeah. And that's good enough, that type of a pro forma, because you can kind of figure out this is how much it's going to cost. And is this like Australia even want your product? You know, there's a lot
Sure.
of things to analyze. Before I let you go, I gotta ask. I watched the Shark Tank, so
Oh,
now I'm
cool.
going to have to go back
That's great.
and try to find it. What was it like? I mean, you got some pretty smart people that you're in front of.
We had four smart people and A-Rod on on ours. He was our guest judge. That was interesting. The experience is exceptional.
Hmm.
It's, if you as a consumer brand operator at any stage, like you have the opportunity to do it, just say yes. Figure
Hmm.
it out. You'll have time to figure it out. Like you just do it.
Yeah.
Um, for us, it took a couple years to get actually on air. And over the course of that couple years, we grew from $1 million a year business to a $10 million a year business. So we were we were on the bigger side of Shark Tank companies to go on. So as expected, they spent 50 of the 55 minutes we were taping just beating us up for not needing to be there. If you saw the episode and you recall Mark Cuban saying you're either the worst business people in the world or you don't need to be here, was his like opening line quote. But it was an amazing experience. It's so good for the company, regardless of, your emotional concerns, which we certainly had. We built structure to mitigate them, but around them making you look stupid or making the company look bad or whatever. I mean, to be fair, like they can make it into whatever they want to make it into. They have enough footage to do what they want to do, but it's not in their best interest to make everybody look stupid. And we did a great deal on TV. We did not end up doing the deal in real life that's a longer conversation, but it worked out well. We had a great relationship with Mark and Lori, and it was an amazing experience.
Mark went to my alma mater.
So nice.
I'm a Hoosier. Before I let you go, is there anything else that I did not hit upon that you want to share with everyone? I want to get into a little bit about, they go to the website and what happens. How do they get info?
There are some demo things on the website. You can sign up for a demo and see the product. We're at still a relatively early, not making a lot of noise yet phase. So you're not going to see it. I'm not building the business on paid media like our last company was. We love showing you the product. We love finding ways to help or other early stage operators answer questions that are difficult to answer. Or frankly, in many cases, you may not even know the question to ask. That is literally the point of the system. That is defines my next chapter in life. So
and is it Pentane.com? Is it, what's the website? And ladies and gentlemen, Pentane, LinkedIn.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Adam Callinan. So I'm doing a little bit of yelling there, but again, it's mostly around just helping people answer questions. I love helping early stage operators. So if you have, anything I can do to help answer questions around intellectual property, we had a crazy patent portfolio that we grew from nothing. In that consumer world, I'm happy to help. So please feel free to reach out.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for coming on the Richer Geek Podcast. I don't know if it's snowing up there yet. I was going to say enjoy some skiing pretty soon.
It has been snowing. It's
unbelievable.
It's been an early snowy fall. It's been great.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Mike.